if our speakers can all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what sparked your interest in becoming a PA and what solidified your choice. And also, if you were initially on another career path, what made you decide to switch to the pre-PA path?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashley. I'm Ashley Garabelli. I'm a surgical PA, graduated in 2019 from PA school and went to Norwalk Hospital in Yale's surgical residency program. And I just graduated in September from that. Why PA? So many reasons. Such a great career path. Love my job. I was initially planning to be a physician. I was pre-med, had my, did my bachelor's in biomedical sciences. And during that time, you're shadowing so many different providers and, really trying to get that experience in before you apply to medical school. And I remember graduating and then just kind of taking my time and thinking about if it was the right fit for me. And so I, took some time off and continued to shadow. And I just felt like it wasn't the perfect fit on how I wanted to practice medicine, but there was no other career choice. I love medicine and I love, working with patients and things like that. So I didn't even know what a PA was, didn't know what a PA did. I started shadowing a cardiac PA that was taking care of my grandmother. His name is Jeff. He is incredible. He's so knowledgeable. He is an excellent provider. And he had more time with patients and teaching them about their illness and about treatment plans and things like that. And I learned more about, lateral mobility that PAs have. PAs are not required to do a residency, so that's a bonus, unless you end up in one like I did. But it has some differences, there, and that's what made me think, maybe this could be a better fit. So that's, kind of how I ended up switching over and looking into the prereqs and the application process.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Sochi Rentelm. I am a physician assistant certified. I've been a PA since 2015. I specialize now in urgent care and aesthetic medicine. So kind of an interesting combination there, but I did do family medicine for 4 years. So I have a primary care background. I definitely took a circuitous route, much like Ashley did, to get to my career, but I'm so happy that I did. I'm even grateful for those gap years where you're kind of trying to figure everything out. I wouldn't, if I were to go back and do it again, I would do the same thing. I originally wanted to be a physician as well. When I was kind of my why is my parents are both elementary school teachers in Los Angeles, in an underserved area, low income area of Los Angeles. And I noticed at a really early age that health disparities have an effect on every part of everyone's life, including their education. So there was a lot of conversations at the dinner table about kids missing school because their parents were chronically ill or not doing their homework or having toothaches, things that didn't really apply to my life. And so I took notice in that. And so that, in combination with my love of science and the human body and anatomy and all of that, kind of was what led me to decide to be a doctor from a very early age. And so I just kind of put my blinders on and went down that track. I went to UC Irvine. I was a biological sciences major. I kind of struggled a little bit through my classes. Definitely did not thrive in that very competitive pre-med track type of environment. I was really kind of insecure the entire process, but I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I just kind of kept chugging along. I was definitely one of those interesting people that didn't even know what a PA was. I mean, I don't know if maybe I'd seen it in passing, but I didn't truly know what that career option was. I just really had my blinders on, as I mentioned before. And so I actually took the MCAT. I applied to med school. I got into a school in the Caribbean. And then I kind of came to a point where I said, well, do I want to do this or do I want to try to reapply again to med school? But at the same time, I had, because of my experiences working in hospitals and public health, I came across a lot of different types of careers that were part of the healthcare team, including nurse practitioners, nurses, PAs. And I just, started to really think about it further. And I started to shadow some PAs just to see how, their daily lives were. And I kind of just felt like these are my people. I don't know how more to explain that, but they just seem to have a little more work-life balance. They focused on patient education. Build such specialties, which obviously, although it was a big reason, it's a huge reason, like in hindsight, because I'm doing that now and I've done that. And then I love the work-life balance, the shorter schooling, the ability to have more time with patients. Kind of my initial reasons of going into medicine in the first place was to have that one-on-one patient education and help health disparities in my own backyard in Los Angeles. That was where I wanted to practice medicine. That's where I grew up. And I was worried about going to school somewhere really far away and not sure if I would kind of ever get back to where I originally wanted to practice medicine. So I figured I had a better chance of going to school in California, in Southern California. So those were all the reasons. And then as soon as I made that switch, I was excited, I was motivated. Even though I had no idea what I was doing and I wasn't sure if I would get in, I just remember my whole mindset changed and I knew it was a better fit for me. And so I applied to school. I went to USC for PA school. I got in on my first application cycle, and I graduated in 2015 and haven't looked back.
Hi, everyone. I'll go next. Okay, so my name is Vivo. I am currently an urgent care physician assistant. I've been practicing for 2 years now. Originally, I wanted to go into dermatology, but it just so happened I fell in love with urgent care, and now I'm here. I don't have any, maybe later on, like Zoshi, I'll change to aesthetic, maybe work both at the same time, because I think it's great to have a good foundation in medicine at the same time, do something you like. Why I wanted to go into PA school. I think it really started with when I moved to the US. I immigrated with my family when I was about 9 years old. We went to California, and at the time, my mom was diagnosed with thyroid disease. At the time, she had a really large goiter that needed treatment, but we used a lot of our money towards buying a plane ticket, getting a place to live when we moved to America, that we didn't have enough financial resources to get her the treatment that was needed. So at the time, what sparked my interest for medicine was when we received help from the communities, from organizations for care. And so that's what inspired me to go into medicine. I wanted to be able to one day give back to the community, one day help those who cannot afford healthcare. Because to me, I feel like it's such a human basic right to get proper healthcare that we shouldn't rely on how much money a person has to be able to afford good healthcare. And that was what drove me into medicine in the first place. But I didn't know if I wanted to be a physician, because I did shadow a few. And I felt like the ones that I shadowed, they weren't really happy. Maybe just the ones I shadow, but they weren't able to allocate a lot of their time towards other aspects of their life. It's funny because the ones that I shadow were like, okay, don't go into medicine, like don't do this, don't be a doctor. You won't have time for anything else. And so I was like, okay, well, this is reassuring. And then I was like deciding if I should go into it or not. And I was just like, okay, well, let me just think about it. This was in high school. And then I had a friend who just graduated PA school, and she told me about it. And she was like, hey, you should really look into this. And at the time, it was just such a new profession that not a lot of people knew about it. And so I was like, okay, I'll look into it. Freshman year of college, I shadowed a few. I reached out to a few PAs, and I saw how flexible it was. And they were still able to have time to allocate it towards other aspects of their life. And I think that was like the driving factor for me to decide into going into the PA profession, because I was like, wow, it's so versatile, so flexible. You can literally go into one specialty and later on, 5 years later, decide to choose something else. For me, that's very important because growing up, I never really had the opportunity to go to school meetings, parent meeting, because my parents worked a lot as immigrants. And so I knew that I wanted to dedicate a lot of my time towards my kids and my family later. And I knew that being a doctor, you might not have that time to allocate it to other aspects of your life. And so that's what made me decide to go into PA as a profession, working in collaboration with other professions, being flexible, having time to do other things that I am passionate about. And here I am as APA.
Hey guys, my name is Sato. I am a recent graduate, the newest graduate here. Graduated this year, 2020, from Duke University. I did my undergrad at UCLA over a decade ago. So I'm actually really happy to see that, you guys have a pre-PA club now, because when I was in school, we definitely didn't have it. The only orgs we really had were AED, whatever the other Greek group is that you guys have. I think there was a pre-med group at that time, and that was about it. So it's awesome that you guys now have a pre-PA club. Actually, you guys have a couple of pre-PA clubs, so that's awesome. But I was a 6-time applicant to PA school. Took me a while, finally got in, just finished, graduated. I'll be working in emergency medicine as soon as my credentialing paperwork goes through. But my reason for PA, so growing up in Ireland, one of my closest family friends, I guess, they were a colorectal surgeon, one of the top colorectal surgeons in the country. And that was my first kind of exposure to medicine. And growing up, I can honestly say I was kind of in between wanting to become a pilot and going into medicine, or a doctor more specifically. And so my parents early on tricked me into thinking that if you can't be 20/20 without glasses on, you can't become a pilot. So that was ingrained in my head. So my mom kind of effectively tricked me into never wanting to become a pilot after that. And then so I kind of had the pre-med route, kind of the doctor route, sort of. I realized pretty early on that I was able to retain a lot of things medically related, whether it was like watching TV, mainly through like dramas, Asian dramas and stuff like that. And that was kind of, made my parents ecstatic, because being Asian, you really have 3 career choices, those being doctor, lawyer, and engineer. So, my parents really pushed me. They're like, oh, great, you want to become a doctor? Let's push you that way. When I got into UCLA, I wanted to go the nursing route and do the BSN program there, in which my parents said they wouldn't pay for my tuition if I chose that. So I went pre-med kind of reluctantly. Didn't really enjoy it too much. I did very poorly in my undergrad. And so, it was kind of like, okay, it'll be nice if I do medicine. It's kind of nice if I don't. That was kind of my mentality all throughout undergrad. And then as I started to get older, I realized, okay, well, my parents are getting older. One of the best ways for me to understand what's going on with them is to be well-trained in medicine. And so it was kind of, I heard a lot of people wanted to be able to help everyone else. My initial intentions were relatively selfish, because I wanted to be able to take care of my parents first. I know my parents aren't going to live with me for the rest of my life. So what could I do to make sure, they get their screening exams done? When something happens, at least there's someone that's medically knowledgeable there to take care of them. So those are my initial reasons. I started working in emergency medicine as an ER scribe, and in family medicine as a MA during my pre-PA years. And I started realizing, I actually like being able to do both. And that was kind of one of my best friends actually ended up going to PA school the year after we graduated. And he started telling me about it, and I was like, this is awesome. This pre-PA route, or the PA route, will allow me to work both in family medicine and primary. Family pushed me towards PA was this ability to be able to do both, I know now I actually like emergency medicine more. So I'll probably pursue emergency medicine, do that for a couple decades of my life. And then as I get older and, when I have kids and don't really want to be working overnight shifts and stuff like that anymore, then that's probably when I'll switch over to family medicine. But, the lateral mobility is probably what drew me in the most. On top of, the medical knowledge that I gained to be able to take care of my parents, my family, my close loved ones, stuff like that, and to be able to take care of other people as well.
Thank you all for sharing your stories and why you chose PA. So our next segment is a pre-PA segment. So our question is, what do you think made you stand out as an applicant? Anyone can jump in and answer the question.
I can go ahead. So I'm very honest about this. My GPA, much like lots of PAs I've talked to, was not great. I was a biosci major, very competitive environment, and I actually can't remember my exact GPA. And I tried to look up my transcripts and it's been so long that that I applied that like it's all gone. Like they changed the system, so I can't even access it. But I think I had a 3.1 something, 1.8, something like that. So low GPA. So obviously I needed to kind of shine in other ways. One of the things I think really helped me stand out was my GRE score. I don't know how this happened, but I did extremely well on it. So I think that kind of helped balance out. So someone who has maybe a lower GPA, if you can really crush the GRE, that would be helpful. So that was something I think stood out. And then I think my why, coupled with my experiences, I just kind of had a very good solid theme, and it matched the school that I was accepted to. Because if you look at their mission statement, it's all about serving the underserved community of Los Angeles, Spanish speaking minorities. All of my experiences were kind of in that capacity. I spoke Spanish. So I think, and I had a true interest in primary care. So I think that was a huge thing. And then I think lastly, I'll say, and this is advice I give to people that I mentor, is having hobbies outside of school and your extracurriculars that you're doing for PA school. Being a real person with exciting things. I remember that our class was super diverse. There was an Olympian, there was someone who's 60, there was like a 21-year-old, there was someone who had like a completely different career as like a film producer. So there was just such a variety, and people just had so many interesting things to bring to the table, because at the end of the day, if you're able to apply to PA school, you're probably pretty smart and have all these great experiences and hours. But what makes you like an interesting human being? So
Yeah, I'll go next. Really love what Xochitl said about having a common theme. I think that is the one advice that I would give to everyone who's applying. I think it's really important to have that mission, not only on your application, but your personal statement. Also, when you apply for PA school and get interviews, they're going to ask you about it. Why PA? Why this profession? Why not medical school? Why not nurse practitioner school? I think being able to have that theme, that mission, and being able to explain that is very important. And so same thing with what I said earlier, my mission has always been helping the underserved populations, helping the uninsured populations because of my own background, my own story. And in college, I volunteer at an organization called Shepherd's Hope. It was an organization, nonprofit, that helps uninsured patients get care. And I think that was what made me stand out, was talking about it and talking about what I want to do later on in life with this mission. I volunteer there. I'm going to go through PA school so that later on I can provide care for those who can't afford it. And a lot of the mission when you look at PA programs, a lot of their mission statement talks about helping the underserved. And so it's very important that you look into the program's personal statement first, see if that fits with your own mission before you apply. And also, yeah, same thing with what's mentioned, have outside hobbies. For me, volunteering within the communities. I actually did like a pageant. I a volunteer, helping Vietnamese community translate for them, things like that, that makes you you. So I think that's what they want to see. What makes you you? Just be yourself. And yeah.
I can go next. I'm going to piggyback off that. I think it's a great thing, like we said, to have, a theme, and what is your mission? What is it that, you're sharing with the committee? Why are you wanting to be a PA, and specifically a PA versus, an APRN or a physician or a nurse? I think in addition to that, something that you're really passionate about, because you can't fake that. When someone is, asking you, why do you want to do this? What specifically? You got to choose experiences that you are incredibly passionate about and excited for. As a student, I went to USF for undergrad in Tampa, Florida, and right next to our campus is Moffitt Cancer Center. And it's an incredible hospital that my aunt had inflammatory breast cancer, stage 3. Her prognosis was not very good. She had like 8 months prognosis, but thank God she actually is in remission now for 15 years. So her treatment was, great, and she's doing well. But that's specifically why I wanted to go to that hospital and volunteer there. There was that close tie to, my heart and my family. And so when, people ask you about those experiences, you have that true connection. So there's so many different areas in medicine, so many different places. Obviously, it's hard to get shadowing opportunities, especially right now with COVID. But if you do have, a choice or an option, choose something that's cool to you. Is it emergency medicine, urgent care, different, scenarios for primary care? It can look so many different ways. So definitely be selective there. And I think on paper, what maybe stood out is definitely, your experiences, your family, your culture. I went to PA school in Miami, Florida. My family immigrated from Brazil. So that, Latin culture is, in my blood, and I know how to connect with, the Latin community. And there's a lot of health disparities because of a lot of the beliefs, and ideals, in people's minds. So maybe they're afraid of the doctor, or, if you have people who are illegal immigrants that are afraid to go to the doctor because they think they're going to get deported. There are things that are very, real issues that cause people to put off getting the treatment that they need. And it can be the simplest thing that can save someone's life. So I think that background and the languages, really help, because you're going to be able to communicate with, those around you. Other than that, grades were okay. In undergrad, they weren't really great, I'm going to be honest. It made me even question going, forward with medicine. I was like, man, this is like pulling teeth. This is hard. I'm doing it, but it's only going to get harder from here. Can I even do this? And, I think just go for it anyway. If you have a deficiency in certain areas on your application, you can shine on other areas, and they look at you as a whole. So if they looked at your application and liked you on paper, they like you. So they think you're qualified, you can do it, you're going to do great. So after that, it's just interviewing. And, in an interview, that's a whole other section, but that's really just you as a person, how you present yourself and what you're going to bring to the table. So I would say kind of that package as a whole probably is what stood out.
Yeah, I think it's important to always remember that, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. There's not a single candidate that only has weaknesses. I graduated from UCLA with a 2.6 something. I was on academic probation 3 times. I met with my counselor because they wanted to take me out of UCLA. And so, there's definitely, my strengths that I've played to. And I think one of the main reasons why I got into Duke, because I only applied to Duke once, was just my last year. And in my personal statement, I talked about, why Eugene Stead created PAs and what his idea was when he created a PA, right? He got Navy corpsmen who had, experience from World War II, previous wars, right? Who had a foundation to already build upon. And so I played to that. I was like, hey, I've been working in the medical field for 6-7 years now. I have 16,000 hours of experience. I have a good, solid foundation on which I want to build upon through, your education that you guys provide me with. So I really, emphasize that that's what I wanted from them. This is what I was capable of. I was like, the exact candidate that Eugene Stead thought about. Because Eugene Stead didn't look at the corpsman and be like, oh, you had a 2.0 in undergrad, we're not going to take you. That's not what he said. So I kind of try to like brush aside my GPA issues because like I said, 2.6 something. I had a 3.8 in these like kind of post-bac years that I just started taking classes and whatnot. I harped on that and I try to brush the 2.67 under the rug. Unfortunately, my director of our program was the one that interviewed me. And during my interview, there was a big circle around my undergrad GPA. And that was the very first question she asked me. She's like, so tell me about UCLA. I was like, forget about that. We don't need to talk about that. We'll move on. Obviously, that she didn't want to do that. So we had to discuss it and whatnot. But it's really about playing to your strengths, right? If you have a lot of volunteer hours, talk about your volunteer hours. If you have, experience going on mission trips like across the country or, different countries of the world, talk about that. If you have a unique experience that, sets you apart from everyone else, then talk about that. So, there's no real one strength that you should play to. It's whatever you have done in your lifetime or you have experienced in your lifetime. Point so that AdCon remember who you are when they're going through all the applications afterwards.
Wow, thank you so much, guys. So for our third segment, it's a PA school segment. Was there anything that you wish you had been taught in PA school?
I can speak on this. I think something that is a little bit frustrating, and I think a lot of my colleagues, especially if you're in primary care and in family medicine, I wish there was a little more focus on prevention of disease, things like nutrition, fitness, exercise, mental health. And I feel like we had like a day of nutrition in PA school. I don't know if anyone else had more than that, but those are huge things that I had to kind of learn on my own. And because I wanted to talk to my patients about it. I'm a PA. I spend a lot of time with, on patient education for my diabetic patients, my patients with hypertension, things that, can be essentially cured by diet and exercise. So I don't know, that's just, I think an easy thing to think of that I wish we had spent a little more time on.
Yeah, something that you brought up, which is a really good point, is I think mental health is very important. And I don't know about the other programs, but my program did not have a course for mental health for as a PA. And during this pandemic, we did not expect to be dealing with such an event. And so I think at the time, a couple months ago, working as an urgent care PA, I was seeing 50 to 60 patients a day. And when my shift starts at 7. And when I got there were already 20, 30 patients lined up outside my clinic, just waiting to be tested. And it's first come, first serve at the urgent care. At the time, we didn't have enough tests for everyone as well. And so it was a month or two that I felt so overwhelmed with everything. Just who do I decide to test? I just feel bad turning patients away because we don't have enough testing. I think that took a toll on my mental health personally, to be honest. There were days when I came home from a 12-hour shifts and I was just so exhausted. Like, did I choose the right career path? Like, did I didn't, what do I do? Because I feel like it's not something that's talked a lot about in medicine. I feel like there's a barrier between like medical providers asking for help, because we feel like we're always there to provide, right? We're not there to ask for help when we are facing with like anxiety or depressions. And so at the time I felt like, oh, like who do I talk to regarding my mental health? How do I get better? how do I overcome this? How do I deal with this pandemic? And so what helped was reaching out to my colleagues and talking about it. And they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm feeling the same way, but I'm just too afraid to talk about it because I just don't want to be seen like weak, talking about my mental health when I should be focusing on providing care for patients. And so I wish that was something that was taught, I guess, more in PA school, like a small course or session to talk about later on, how to better be equipped with dealing with certain situations, talking about mental health for providers in general. So that was one thing that I hope to see implemented in PA programs in the future.
Yeah, I think you harped on something really important. I think we need to start normalizing the conversation of mental health amongst providers. A lot of times, we feel like our job is to take care of a patient, and you can't, I've always said you can't take care of a patient if you don't take care of yourself first, right? How are we supposed to be there for a patient? Have a conversation, be able to focus on them 100% if in the back of our minds we have, there's like a clutter box back there, right? And we're not able to dedicate ourselves to our patients completely. So I think it's really important that when providers feel burnout to really be able to talk about it, feel comfortable talking about it. So that's definitely one thing I hope to be able to do in the near future, is really being able to bring that to light. Things I wish we learned more, ultrasound techniques, something that I'll hope to be able to utilize more in a ER setting. But we had like a day of that, I think at most. Never really got to use it during clinical year. Probably used it more as a pre-PA, as an ER tech in the ER, and stuff like that. And the other thing would be, a little more in depth about psychiatric or mental health illnesses, not just, the bipolar disorders, the depression, stuff like that, but really psychosomatic disorders. Something that really our healthcare system does not take care of very well. It's not taught in school. A lot of providers may feel like you're a quack if you actually do think that these things are an issue, but we have a general understanding. Get chest pain. If you are anxious, you can get palpitations. If you are stressed out, you can get headaches, right? So why not be able to have different types, like back pain? If you have a history of PTSD, why not to the brain that are symptoms, right? That we're really not taught. And if we never teach it in school, then people aren't really going to go out after school and try to figure out what this is. So I remember we did have a brief 2-hour lecture on issues like this, and a lot of people in my classes blew it off like it was quack science. And it's really disappointing to see, because being someone that worked in that specialty, being a psychobiology major, and having taken like numerous neuroscience classes and stuff like that at UCLA, it's really frustrating to see that our own colleagues are the ones that are blowing it off while patients suffer with no answers. A New York study back in the 90s, I think, showed that 40 to 50% of people, the average human being, have herniated discs in their back, yet they walk around pain-free. So what about is it like, that these people can have significant herniated discs in their back, yet they can walk around pain-free, whereas someone has a very minimal herniated disc, maybe 1-2 millimeters, that have no form of nerve impingement, that are having severe pain. And they started digging into deeper, and they had a psychiatric history of some kind of PTSD, some kind of trauma, some kind of stress. There was a stressor there. And that's stuff that we do not hear about, and we're not taught it. So therefore, we're not able to give our patients the knowledge. So hopefully within the next 10, 20, 30 years, that's something that, really teach our students.
Absolutely. I really love what all of you have said regarding that, because I think that's a really huge deal for us as and I think a lot of the illnesses and symptoms that people are feeling is definitely at least a huge contributor, psychosomatic, definitely. And the way our lifestyles are here in this country, it's very, get in the rat race, you get very busy, and once you kind of show and prove that you're able to take on X amount, then more gets added, right? So it just gets to a point where are people's breaking point? And I think a lot of the anxiety, the depression, increase in suicides, all these things that we're seeing, even pre-COVID, has to do with that a lot. So I absolutely agree. We need to advocate, even as we have our, responsibility and our power, in our own circles where we practice and with social media and family and friends. So it'll be really great to see what happens, in the next coming years. For me, as far as PA school goes, what I wish we learned. I'm a little biased, obviously, with a surgical background, but I wish that we had learned more about surgery itself. I think that our surgical modules covered a lot about caring for a surgical patient, caring for them on the floor or, pre, post-op in an outpatient setting. But what about the surgeries themselves? We learn patient has X, problem, they, are a candidate for surgical management, but okay, now what does that surgery look like, from start to finish, from prep, to closing. I think that a lot of times rotations, you get a taste, hopefully you get to be hands-on, but I just think that being prepared for that, because you're going to get so much more out of it, and you're going to be ready for those rotations, and you'll be better prepared if you do choose to pursue that as your career. So that's something that was more shocking to me out of school, that I wish that I had, learned more about. But it's just you don't have the time to cover so much material, and you're already taking such a short amount of time. So that's something that I wish we had more time for.
All right, thank you all for sharing. So our next segment is the Life After PA School segment. So this question is directed at Sato. So Sato, you recently just graduated PA school and you became certified. Can you talk about how taking the PANCE was, and also getting acclimated as a new grad and landing a job, how that was?
Yeah, sure. So taking the pants, I felt like my program prepared me pretty well. We did a PACRAT, which is like a practice board style exam after our first year. At that point, there's like an arbitrary score of like, they assume that if you get higher than this score, you're passing. At that point, pretty much most of my class was above that score. We took another one towards the end of clinicals. I think it was like 2 or 3 rotations before we ended. And at that point, everyone's score had gone up by 15, 20, 30 more points. So I think we were pretty confident in terms of, whether or not we would pass the exam, given that our program had like a 98, 99% passing rate. Nationwide, it's still 94, 95, 96%, I think. So I felt, pretty confident leading up to the exam. Maybe like a week before, I became a nervous wreck. And that's when it really hit, like, oh my God, I don't want to be that one person that doesn't pass out of our class kind of thing. So that was stressful. In terms of, I passed it fine. Had no issues there. In terms of job hunting, I never job hunted because I worked in the ER for about 4 or 5 years before getting into PA school. I was an ER scribe for several years, and then I was an ER tech after. So I had a really good relationship with a lot of the physicians that worked there, including the assistant director and the director there. I was a groomsman for the assistant director. So my job hunt was really, a text message to my friends saying, hey, I'm done with PA school. I'm going to come on board with you guys now. It was kind of a verbal agreement that him and I had before school that I was going to PA school to become an ERPA. And when I came back, there'd be a job waiting for me. So unfortunately, I can't really speak to, the job market, what it's like to apply. What I can speak to is, networking, how important it is to network before PA school. A lot of my classmates are just now getting a job or still don't have a job yet, after graduating due to, COVID, due to being a new grad. There's certain specialties in certain places that like new grads, and there's a lot of places that don't, so it's when you're trying to get a job, especially during COVID times, you're a new grad coming out, you're also competing with everyone that got furloughed or everyone that got let go, right? So some places, if they have a choice between someone that's been a PA for 5-6 years versus someone that's a new grad, they might want someone that's a new grad over the the 5-6 year experienced person over in the new grad. So I feel like that's where they're struggling with. And so, really finding a job before pre-PA school, somewhere that A, it teaches you a lot before PA school, but B, it's something that you're interested in, are probably, two important things, because you never know. It might be a job waiting for you after PA school if you have a good relationship with your boss, or you have a good relationship with, whoever does the hiring over there. I think there was a third part of the question that I don't remember. Sorry, I'm kind of a goldfish. I forget things.
No, I think that's okay. Thank you so much, Shuttle. So moving on to our next segment, it's on the job roles. So this question is addressed for V and Zochi. Do you think you guys can please elaborate more on the insurance plans you guys see as PAs, and like what you guys did to help others in terms of giving them options where their insurance didn't cover a procedure or medication? And if you guys can all speak on the scope of practice as a PA, and just like speak upon the lateral mobility the PA profession allows, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, I feel like that was a lot of questions in one. Let's see if I can do this. Also, I hate insurance things, but I'm gonna try to overcome. When I was in, just to clarify, I don't think I really spoke on this before. Immediately out of PA school, I worked in primary care and family medicine, but it was at a very unique type of clinic called a federally qualified health center. Definitely underserved, uninsured, underinsured. Luckily, when I worked there, it was, right after, Obamacare. And so even if patients didn't have insurance, there were lots of different options to help them out. And one of them was a program called My Health LA. And essentially it was very limited, and it was very annoying, but I had a list of medications. I could refer them to LA County, USC, even though their waits might be like 6 months, 8 months, 9 months. They were also really difficult. Like mostly when you're referring in primary care to a specialist, it's really easy. You just say the reason you want to see them and they accept them, and that's it. At least that's usually my experience. But with this specific program, you would have to get x-rays first for them. You'd have to do all of the stuff, all the like legwork for them. And then even then they would sometimes just tell you how to manage them and not see them, which is fine because at least they helped me out. And then again, the medications that they could get for free, I had to pick from those, which was sometimes frustrating because of course there was always a patient that maybe had something that was out of that. And then I would try to see special pharmacies that could give them discounts, things like that. So it definitely depended on the patient. There wasn't like one quick option. That's what sometimes is so time consuming about primary care. You get 15 minutes to help this patient, and maybe the health, doesn't take that long, but all of the paperwork and all this other stuff is what really takes a long time. So I hope that helps answer the first question. The second one, like scope of practice. Should I answer Alyssa's question here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So really great question. It's something that I found because I do a lot of mentoring for pre-PAs that are just exploring the idea of pursuing the PA route. So they haven't even started yet. And so it's interesting to me how much this question comes up, and people aren't really aware of. I think a lot of people think that I have a doctor, my supervising physician, like over my shoulder, essentially. Now I have worked in 3 completely different fields, and I've had pretty much the same situation. So in primary care, I had a supervising physician that came to our clinic once, I think, or twice a month to see patients. So 95% of the time I was alone, completely alone. So I saw all of the adult and pediatric patients by myself. We did have a pediatrician as well that was an MD that saw, a lot of pediatric patients. But if there's any like overflow or sick visits, then I saw them. So I would see patients from 8 to 5 by myself. I was able to call or email or text if I had a question, which I just learned to like mostly figure out things on my own. And of course I had the pediatrician there as a resource, which was really great. And then I guess a certain amount of my charts were signed at the end of the month, and I had nothing to do with it. So someone came in, collected the charts, and gave them to someone, the supervising physician, to look over, but I was not involved in this process. And then we of course had, like reports and like, feedback. And sometimes they'd say, oh, like we want to make sure you're doing this. And so I would get little pieces of feedback, but it was always positive. And it was very, rare and very spaced out. In my aesthetics practice, again, I see patients by myself. My doctor is never on location rather. I text her, call her all the time. She's amazing, incredible, fully trusts and supports me, but I have her basically on speed dial if I need any help. And she signs my charts every Monday. And Sunday, I make sure Sundays that I have everything done and everything looks good. And then on Monday, I look and they're all signed off and that's it. And she rarely gives me feedback. And then I'm also doing urgent care telemedicine. And obviously I'm in my own living room, and so no one's here. I have someone on Slack that I can ask any questions if I need to, but I am autonomous, and I assign every day. There's a supervising physician assigned because we have a lot of PAs and NPs, and I guess they review the charts. Again, I haven't gotten any negative feedback, so I'm assuming I'm doing okay. So I think that's something that a lot of like people that are just exploring the profession don't understand, and that's not always the case. I do have a lot of my colleagues that do have their supervising physician more on site, and a little bit like if you're in surgery, obviously you're working right next to them. So obviously that's not always the case, but I think it's important to point out that for a lot of people it is the case. And then the lateral mobility, well, I kind of already talked about that. One of the biggest, most beautiful parts of being a PA, if you don't like the specialty you're in, you can switch. If you want to do two specialties at once to kind of feed both like parts of your soul, you can do that as well. I obviously did like underserved primary care, like 95% Spanish speaking. And then I immediately went to like elective aesthetic medicine, like completely two different populations. But I love that. They're both rewarding in completely different ways. They have their pros and their cons, both of them. So yeah, I think I got them all.
Yeah, I think you touch on a lot of the question, answer a lot of the questions. So I'll just add on what my personal experience in terms of insurance and supervising physician. So the urgent care that I'm working at is at an underserved area. And so a lot of the patients that we see have very good coverage insurance. Their copay is like $4 per visit. So that's really good, right? And all of their drugs and medications are covered. So that's 90% of my patients. The other 10% is like commercial insurance, so their copay is higher. We do offer a self-pay option. Self-pay patients can come and see us for $120. Sometimes if I'm doing a procedure on them, I will try my best as a provider to include whatever is needed within that 120, because I would hate it to overcharge them or charge them for something that they're self-pay and they can't afford much. Another good option is GoodRx. I will recommend patients that are self-pay to use GoodRx, and I'll try to look at the prices before I prescribe them. I mean, the medications in terms of like effectiveness, generally pretty, I'm not going to decide that, based on the price, of course. I have to make sure that it covers whatever condition or disease I'm trying to treat. But it's good to try to look up GoodRx prices before you prescribe them to your patients. Because sometimes if they're too expensive, the patients might not pick them up and they might not take it. And so I'll tell my patients, hey, these 21 tablets is only like $10 at Walmart. So go to Walmart, use this coupon code GoodRx and pick up the medications. And they really like that. In terms of scope of practice, I have a lot of autonomy. The urgent care that I'm working at, I'm the only provider there. So I'm in charge of seeing like whatever amount that comes in that day, whether it be 30, 40, 50, or even 60 patients. So that's the hard part sometimes, right? Not knowing how many are going to come into your clinic. And being the only one there, you can get overwhelmed sometimes. But the good part is that you have a lot of autonomy in terms of making your decision. You call the shots. But at the same time, when you're not sure on a particular case and you're like, oh, I'm not sure about this one, I might want to talk to someone about this. My supervising physicians, they're only a call away, or I text them. There are 3 of them, and they work at their own office. They're internist, and so they have their own like practice. And so I'll text them, hey, I have this patient coming in for this. I just want to get your opinion. This is what I have planned for them. This is my, you present to them like, this is my assessment, my diagnosis, this is my plan. What do you think? Should I add something else? And sometimes they're like, okay, I agree with the plan. I think I would do the same thing. Or sometimes they're like, well, add on this test. Do this, contact this person, have them follow up with this specialist. So it's good to have them kind of like be on the side. So whenever you need them, they are just one phone call away or one text away. At the same time, like being able to make your own plan for your patients, being able to have that autonomy is very important to me. And not a lot of my colleagues have that. I think it's very important for you when you find a job to interview with the physician that you're going to be working with, because sometimes physicians, they like to micromanage too. And so if your relationship with them is not good, and during the interview, you can see that, it might not be a good experience for you working together with them. So it's very important to find out if you're going to have a good collaborative relationship with your supervising physician. For signing charts, I do have a separate supervising physician who signs off the charts, and she just reads them. I'll text her like, hey, I'm done with the notes for all these dates. And she'll go over them, and then sometimes she'll text me and be like, hey, I think you should add this or change this and that, but very rarely. The third one, so she already said it, very flexible, right? That's the main thing about being a PA, being able to change and move to different specialties whenever you want to. So let's say I want to do urgent care for another few years, but then I want to transition to aesthetic, I want to do dermatology. I can do that. Just have to find a place who's willing to take you under their wings and train you.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. So our next segment is called the Day in the Life and Work-Life Balance segment. So this question is for Sato. What is the day in the life of a PA student?
Oh gosh. I think it depends. Didactic year, we had class from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. With an hour break between 12 and 1. So it was just one lecture after another. Sometimes we'd get off early. If it was an early day, we'd get off at maybe 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. If we're really lucky, we get off at like 2. But usually 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. After school, I don't like bringing work home. Home to me is home. It's somewhere where I can relax. I can, watch TV, be on the internet, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So I never brought my school stuff back home. Lucky for me, our campus was open till 11 at nighttime. So I would stay from 5 o'clock till 11 o'clock on campus and study. Bring my dinner with me to school, heat it up, and then maybe take like an hour break from 5 to 6, eating dinner and watching Netflix or something like that. And then I study from 6 o'clock to 11, pretty much every day. Then on the weekends, I'd probably get to school whenever I woke up, which is like normally like 10. So I'd go from 10 o'clock to about 7 or 8 o'clock again at school, and just be there studying. A lot harder on Sundays when I got to watch football, and Saturdays when I watch football too. So that kind of made it a little harder. But most of the time it was just a lot of studying. Any free time I had, I was either catching up on sleep. Being far away from my family and my friends and stuff like that kind of made it a little easier for me, because I had no distractions. No one really that wanted to hang out with me, other than my friends, obviously at school. But no family members nagging me, telling me to come home, that kind of stuff. In terms of clinical year, I mean, it just varies from rotation to rotation. I had pretty good hours, normally maybe 7, 8 o'clock till 5, 6 o'clock for most of my rotations. I got really lucky with surgery. My surgery was from 7 o'clock to 5. I've heard of nightmare stories where my friends showed up at 4 and went home at 10. And that's 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. Not 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. because that'd be really nice. But so, it really depends on where you end up for your rotations, what the rotation's like, what electives and stuff you choose. that will vary. But yeah, that was pretty much my day in my life.
Awesome. And then for Ashley, what is the day in the life of a postgraduate in surgical residency?
So surgical residency, let's see, typical day. We had lectures every morning starting at 6:30 a.m. and we had sign out in the PACU at 7:30. So we'd have lecture for an hour. You would typically pre-round on your patients depending on the service you were in. So if it's a service that doesn't really require that, you could just start your day at 6:30. If you're, for example, the vascular service, we would pre-round. So I would get there a little after 5 and see all my patients, examine them, see, any overnight events, read their charts, so on and so forth, get notes started, then go to lecture, and then sign out. You're passing along basically, from the resident and staff PAs who were on overnight, signing out each and every surgical patient that they were covering and, explaining overnight events, anything that happened, anything to watch out for during the day, tests that were ordered, results that you're waiting for, things like that. So we take anywhere from, 30 minutes to an hour for sign out. At the same time that that's happening, however, if you're scheduled for cases, our cases start at 7 a.m. So sometimes, if you're scheduled, you step away from the team and the rest of your members on that service will get sign out while you go into a case. Some days you could be, at least in my program, it was very OR heavy. So we had, days in the OR. I mean, I want to say 4 out of, 5 days, and then give or take if you're on during the weekend. But you could be on cases for the entire day and not do any floor management, or you could kind of be in and out. So if you have a couple morning cases and then catch up with your team and do whatever else has to be done, for the rest of the day. So it varies. We had OR call, which is from 4 to 11 p.m. So you work your normal day shift and then you stay, and you have your pager on you in case any cases go in after hours, and you will be the first to. If any others went in beyond that, then whoever was on call, they would cover, and, we would kind of sort it out, make sure there was coverage on the floor during that time. And then we did have first call shifts. So that's when you're doing 24-hour, call, you work your day, and then you stay overnight. It was pretty heavy for the residents because you're kind of the first line for any calls, any questions, anything from nursing, especially at first when you're starting out because everyone's new. So you might get calls just because of orders that were, put in a specific way and weren't, specific enough for the team. So as you get more experience, you start to get fewer and fewer calls from pharmacy and from, nursing and things like that. It gets a little better. And I think you learn how to manage things, much better. Aside from that, we would, participate in M&M conferences. So that's morbidity, mortality. Those were monthly in the mornings on Wednesdays, and grand rounds were weekly. So we would participate in, watching them and learning from those lectures, but we also had to present grand rounds cases as well in my program. And other than that, I mean, we had a few projects. We did a quality insurance project for return to OR cases and trying to pinpoint, specific things that we could change in our protocols that would prevent patients from going back to the OR. That's an unplanned return to OR. And we also had to present cases during our electives. And I thought that was actually really fun. It's a lot, to juggle on your plate, but it's fun to choose a specific case that was really cool during your rotation to talk about, share with your colleagues. And if there's something really unique that happened, you're sharing that teaching point with them as well. So I think that's kind of our typical, schedule.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So our next question is for Xochi. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. What is the day in the life and work-life balance as a dermatology and telemedicine PA?
So yeah, I am very happy with my current schedule. It's still busy and it varies greatly. So I think it's best to kind of give you like a week overview. But just to kind of mention the difference. So I used to work in primary care and family medicine, and it was 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And often I stayed later, especially my first 6 months as a PA, maybe even till 7 p.m. sometimes. So very like that's a very typical work schedule. But now I have a lot of variety. Essentially, I work in aesthetic medicine or cosmetic dermatology Wednesday through Saturday. So I do work on Saturdays, which at first I thought I would hate, but I actually love it. It's kind of a fun day and it ends early. So I still get to enjoy the rest of my Saturday, and I can take it off if I need to for an important event. So I work Wednesdays from 10 to 3, Thursdays from 10 to 4 or 10 to 6, Fridays from 10 to 6, and Fridays from 10 to 4. So a very, very nice schedule. I used to have to go to the gym by 5:30, 6 a.m. to get my workout in before 8 o'clock clinic. Now I can actually work out at a normal time before, after the sun is up. So that's just the aesthetic derm. So very light hours, very nice balance. And then I do urgent care per diem, which varies. I give them Mondays and Tuesdays so that I can have Sunday fully off. And they sometimes give me 2 days and there'll be a 10-hour shift. And some days I'll get 1 day, or some weeks I'll get 1 day, and some weeks I will get 0. So for example, last week they didn't give me any, so I'm excited about that. But that's at home, which is nice. So there's no commute. You don't have to get ready that much because no one can really see you. It is a 10-hour shift though, so it's a little bit longer. I love the variety because, like, for example, this week I'm not doing my shifts, but I'm doing something like this. I do a lot of mentoring sessions on Mondays and Tuesdays. I have a lot of, I don't know if you guys follow me on social media, so working on content creation and different projects there. I love that flexibility. I also can make appointments for myself, which was really hard to do when I had a Monday through Friday 8 to 5. I can go to my own doctor and dentist appointments, or PA. It just gives me a little bit more work-life balance, and I love it. So. Oh, I guess I should probably say what I do during the day. Essentially, I get into work around like 9:45. First patient, I don't see that many patients. And in aesthetic medicine, you really have to take a long time with patients. The procedures take longer, obviously. So I sometimes only have like 10 patients a day. It's not that many. So, I do a lot of consultations, which are patients that are just interested in chatting about what they plan to do, want to do. So answering a lot of questions, a lot of patient education, which is key to any specialty, being a PA. And then I'm doing a lot of procedures, injectables, filler, Botox, microneedling, lasers. I do a lot of medical dermatology as well. So like acne, hyperpigmentation, melasma, rosacea, perioral dermatitis, on and on and on. And then in urgent care, it's I clock in, I sit on my computer, and my patients, I have a schedule, and it really varies on the day. Sometimes they're boom, boom, boom every 20 minutes. And sometimes there's a big 1 hour lag, and so I fold some laundry or something. But usually for urgent care telemedicine, the most common things that I see are UTIs is a huge one, which is a great one that you can treat, via telemedicine. A lot of rashes, which is nice. They can send you a photo. And then like pink eye, like conjunctivitis, styes. I do a lot of coronavirus concerns. So that's actually was something really important. And that's when I first started, was during the pandemic. So a lot of triaging. So people were afraid to go to the doctor or go anywhere. So I'm kind of the person that tells them, like, no, you need to go to the ER. It looks like you're struggling to breathe. Or I think you're fine. I think that tickling your throat is probably just allergies. Just stay home. It's safer to quarantine at home. So I was doing kind of triaging for coronavirus, and now I'm involved in something called COVID positive program, because unfortunately there's a lot of sequelae that happen, a lot of complications after having COVID that the system is having trouble. Pulmonologists are booked up for a long time. So I provide like maybe I'll mail out a patient a pulse ox and have them check their oxygenation, and then check in with me and make sure they're doing okay, even though they're still having shortness of breath, and it's like a month or two after. Or people that are having rashes after having COVID, or anosmia, or hypoglycemia, like lack of sense of smell or taste. I had a guy that for 3 months, he hasn't had any taste or sense of smell or taste. And no one has given him like a decongestant or a nasal steroid yet. So I gave him that. So lots of variety in my days and in my schedule as well.
Awesome. And then the last question for this segment is for V. So what is the day in the life and work-life balance as an urgent care PA?
Thank you for the question. So my shift is from 7 to 7, so 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So 12-hour day shifts, and I work only half a month, so 14 shifts. I mean, you have the freedom to pick up more shifts if you want to, but I think the way it is now, I think it's just perfect. So when I get there at 7 a.m., I will start off by going over labs for patients. So labs that we order at the urgent care or COVID tests and results. As a provider, we have to go through them and we have to say, okay, message my medical assistant, please call this patient and inform her that her labs shows such and such. So sometimes it's just very random depending on how many labs you ordered the days prior. Sometimes I'll go in and there are already like 20 labs that need to be reviewed on my table. Or sometimes I'll come in and there's only like 5. So it's your job as an urgent care provider to go over the labs and to send the messages to the medical assistant so that they can call the patients. Sometimes the labs are too complicated for me to explain to the medical assistant, and it's just sometimes it might be too hard for them to translate that or to relay that to the patient. I'll call the patient myself and I'll tell them like, hey, this is what it means, because you have to be able to explain the labs in layman terms for your patients. After that, I will start seeing patients, sometimes very random. On average, we see like 20, 30 patients a day, sometimes maybe 50 or even 60. So really have to pace yourself. Sometimes if I have time between patients, I'll spend more time with my patients, but sometimes you just don't have that time. And so I'll try to keep my time limited to 15 minutes per patient. If it's easier, like just sore throat and then they tested positive for strep, it can be like 10 minutes. It can be like a 10-minute visit. At an urgent care, right, especially the area that I'm working at, common cases that I see include sprains, fractures. I see a lot of, right now especially, a lot of upper respiratory symptoms, patients coming with like bronchitis, cold and flu season's coming, so, and also COVID. So right now I'm doing both telemedicine and also like an in-clinic visit. So I'm in the clinic, but if they're coming in for COVID symptoms, we do a telemedicine visit. So we'll have them fill out their paperwork in their car in the parking lot, just because we're seeing regular patients too. And if we bring those COVID patients, potential COVID patients into the clinic, it might, is just not good for the other patients who don't have upper respiratory symptoms. So we try to separate them. So patients with COVID symptoms or potential COVID symptoms come in and they'll call first. We'll bring the paperwork out to the car. They'll fill the paperwork in the car. They'll call us and do a telemedicine visit with me. I'll triage them, ask them their symptoms. And if it's not severe, I'll have my medical assistant, dressed in PPE, of course, come out and swab them for COVID. And then if I think like, oh, this person is, like Sochi said, like struggling to breathe, excuse me, struggling to breathe, or they're like, oh my gosh, like my chest is hurting, it's been constant, or anything that's severe, like I couldn't even drive here, like my family member brought me here. Some things that you think, oh, wow, like I can't bring you in for further evaluation. I have to send you off to get further evaluated. The good thing is that there's an emergency medicine, ER, the hospital, an ER across the street from my clinic. And so I'll just send them there. I'll say, hey, you need to go to the hospital at the ER, because they're better equipped to further evaluate you. For regular patients though, I still see them regularly in the clinic. So they'll come in and be evaluated inside the clinic. So that's what I do for 12 hours. Towards the end of the day, I will make sure that all the labs are in. I will make sure that whoever's working the next day, that they're aware that what labs I order. If I have a patient that I need to follow up with, hey, I saw this patient, I send them home, discharge them, but is it okay if you follow up with them, make sure that they're okay overnight and whatnot? Then I'll, excuse me, tell my colleague, the colleague who I'm working with, like, hey, do you mind? I'm not working tomorrow. Can you follow up with that patient tomorrow, the next day? It's like, hey, how did you do overnight? So that's what my day is like. Right now, we're seeing a lot of COVID patients, but sometimes we'll see just very, we'll have very regular complaints as well.
Thank you so much, everyone. So we're going into our last segment of the panel. And our last question is, during your rough patches on your PA journey, what kept you guys going? And if you would like to end with some last few advice, motivation you have for pre-PAs, please share.
I can go ahead. So advice, and I just blanked on the first question. Can you repeat it one more time for me? Just want to make sure I got it.
During your PA journey,
Oh,
yeah, just your whole journey in general, like during
I remember now. I remember. I was so excited to speak that I got distracted. Thank you. Yeah, so, I think the word that you're using, first of all, is a great word, journey. I think people need to embrace it. It's not a destination. Like, it's not like you just become a PA and like you have to suffer the whole time until you get there. And then once you become a PA, your life is perfect and you're happy. It doesn't work that way. You should, the journey is long and it can be longer for some people. And so you should enjoy every moment of it. And I think one of my biggest pieces of advice, and that kind of help you with that journey mindset, is to appreciate every single failure, mistake, challenge, obstacle, delay in your plans, as a growth opportunity, as a learning opportunity. So anytime something kind of crappy happens, feel your feelings, eat your ice cream, but then, think about it and say, what did this teach me? And maybe this is going to provide a better opportunity, or, makes you appreciate the things that you have, or et cetera, et cetera. So that's probably one of my biggest pieces of advice, just in general in life. But yeah, adopting that mindset will really help you get through, because there's such difficult times, and as much as you study and do well, it's still going to be tough. And then again, obviously there's the journey to get into PA school, which is difficult as well and has lots of ups and downs. So just appreciating even the bad times, I think is important. And then I think I have a few more little tips that I'll just summarize quickly. One of my favorite quotes, I don't even know where it's from, but basically, like, fear. So imposter syndrome, it's something that's going to affect everyone, and it's going to affect you in all, parts of this journey. But, fear and self-doubt, those things are temporary, but regrets are those are forever. So essentially, if you want to be a PA, and that's your goal, then go for it. It might take you a couple extra years than you anticipated, but in the end, if that's what you really want, then you should continue to do it, because I think, not doing it is worse in the long run. And then this again, I took 3 gap years. I know a lot of people took gap years. And I think I get a lot of people that I mentor that are really afraid to take these gap years. And I, again, applying the mindset, the same PA and the same person I am today if I didn't take those gap years, because first of all, for me, it solidified that I wanted to pursue the PA route. But I also just gained so much life experience, so much resilience, social skills, hobbies. Like, I had a job, I worked at Lululemon. So that's kind of where my love of like workout classes, came about. And that's what kind of helped me have work-life balance throughout PA school and now. So, you have to appreciate, it's not, I don't see it as wasted time. I see it as a good thing. So yeah. Was I supposed to say something else? I think that was it, right? Okay.
I can go next. So the first question was, sorry, can you repeat the first question? I blinked out too. I still have to
Yeah,
go
I did the same thing.
about the first question. What was the first question?
So, during your rough patches on your PA journey, what kept you going?
Okay, yeah. So I think what kept me going was going back to your mission and your theme. I think being honest with yourself, why are you doing this? Why do you want to pursue this career? I mean, I think if it's like money, it's just not a good theme or mission. You have to want this because it's not gonna get easy or at all, like the journey itself. PA school, there are times when I'm getting yelled at by surgeons, right, during my rotations, and I'm like, do I really want to do this? Why did I choose this, right? So I think having a common theme, mission, going back to that mission and thinking, this is why I'm doing this. This is my life goal is very important because you're going to come with a lot of adversities, not only through PA school, but also during your time as a PA working as well. I've had patients who didn't want to see me because of the color of my skin or how I looked, or patients who like cuss me out because and call me like, words and names and racial slurs. So days like that, when you're seeing so many patients, and then you have those patients who are very rude to you, very aggressive, very combative, you have to remind yourself why you're doing this. Think about, your mission and your theme. Like, I want to do this because I want to provide care for people that can't get care because of because they can't afford it and stuff like that. You have to remind yourself and be appreciative. Think about the patients who thank you in the past. So that's how I would overcome those adversities. But like I said, it doesn't get easy, and you will have throughout your whole career journey as becoming a PA and being a PA, you face a lot of adversities. One advice I would give you is to, at the end of the day, think back at the patients um, who thank you. For example, if there's a nice patient who gave you cookies or even thank you, like, oh, thank you so much for doing this for me. On days where it's tough, think about those patients so that it can continue to push you to work and you won't be so burnt out and stressed. Another advice is to, it's not, you have your whole life ahead of you. It's not wrong to take a gap year to explore or to try other things. I don't think you should rush into things. But I've had students who ask me, I just feel like I don't have enough clinical hours for this program, or I don't feel like I'm ready for this cycle. Or maybe they have all their paperwork and requirements, but they just don't feel like they're good enough. I tell them like, hey, just go for it. Like, shoot your shot, try. It's okay. If you get rejected, at least you learn from it. Then just keep holding off on it. If you have all your requirements, go for it. Try to apply. If you get an interview and get rejected from it, at least you can learn from the experience so that you can be a better applicant for the next cycle. But for applicants who don't have enough hours, or you feel like you should work more to gain more experience, that's okay too. You can take a gap year and you can do that. But that would be my biggest advice.
I can go next. So what kept me going? Um, the thought of like, what if, what if, had I given up? I applied 6 times in a row from 2012 to 2017. I applied to 29 different programs over 6 years, probably submitted, over 70 applications, I think, over those 6 years. It was, and I got rejected from, say I applied to 70 programs, I got rejected from 69 times. 70 applications, I got rejected 69 times. So, it was really the what if factor that really pushed me every single day. It was, there was plenty of days when I wanted to give up. Yeah, I was, year 4, having applied 4 consecutive years and being told no, speaking to school, admission counselors and them telling me, oh, my GPA is too low. I talked to a school in California and he told me, my GPA is so low that he doesn't think I'll excel in PA school, and that, I probably wouldn't be able to handle the rigors of the curriculum. And that's why they didn't want to accept me. Being told that, there's, just knowing that no matter how hard I tried, how many times I applied, no matter how many hours I had, my GPA was inching up by 0.05 every time, 0.1 if I was lucky, you know, um, it was just that thought where I didn't want to, look back 40 years down the line, working some other job and think, man, what if I applied one more time to PA school? How would it have been different? How would my life be different? How would my family, all those kind of thoughts went through my head. And I was just like, okay, well, I don't want to live the rest of my life thinking, what if? So I continued to apply. I said, all right, well, what are my weaknesses? My glaring weakness is a GPA. There's a reason why you don't see very many people that have a 2.2, 2.3, 2.4 GPA that get into PA school, is because they just flat out don't really accept it, right? Most people have above a 3 point something GPA. Even the lower GPA candidates are still a 3.1, 3.2, 3.3 range. So really, focus on your GPA. If that's your weakness, get it up to above a 3. When I finally got in, I had a 3.03 overall and 3.11 science. So really get it above that mark, and my one thing, Sochi and V talked about it already, is the gap year, right? When you're in school, focus on being in school. This is the only time you get to be an undergrad in your life. If I could go back and do my 4 or 5 years of undergrad over again, I would change absolutely nothing. I socialized, I went out, I partied, I played basketball every day. I did horrible in school, which I regret, but there's nothing else I regret about undergrad, right? Really have fun and 18 to 22, during those 4 years really in undergrad. And then you have to go out and you actually have to make money, right? You can't, some people are lucky, they get, their parents pay for stuff, they get an allowance, that's how they get to pay for school and whatnot. But you're gonna have to get like a real job where you have to work 9 to 5, 8 to 5, 5 days a week. You don't, those 8 a.m. classes are a whole lot more awesome than working 8 to 5 every single day, So enjoy your time when you're at school. When you're done with school, then go find a job, in healthcare, or, be an MA, EMT, whatever it is that you want to do, and really use that time to absorb what the healthcare system is like, absorb, all the medical information, really work for someone that wants to teach you something. The best teachers in my career so far have been my employees, the PAs, the docs, the MPs, the RNs, all those people that wanted to teach me something. Right. So take that as an opportunity, learn from them and use that time, after, when you're no longer taking classes, to dive into learning as much as you can. Because when you're in PA school, there's so much stuff that you have to learn. Every small detail, every big detail, whatever it is that you learned before PA school is one less thing you have to learn when you're in PA school. And that'll make your life 100 times easier. So really, focus on schoolwork when you're in school. Of course, given certain financial situations and stuff, I understand that some people have to work. If you're blessed to be in a situation where you don't, then really, focus on school, do well in school, and then worry about work hours, PCE, HCE, volunteer hours, and whatnot it is after you're done with school, because you'll have a year or two, plenty of time to be able to, accumulate all those hours later on.
I think what I'll add is that each and every person is on their own specific journey. Like that word that we keep, mentioning from the question that I really love, is that you're on your own journey and it looks different than anyone else's. And it's interesting because, all those failures and things that look like failures, they lead to growth. And, we all know that. But if everyone had a perfect application, everyone went through the steps perfectly, what are you going to say to the person that didn't fit that mold? Like, you're able to help people around you by saying, hey, here was my situation. I got in, I did it. You can do it too. Salto, I'm so inspired by your story and your journey because, it looks different than, anyone else's because it's your journey. And I think that that's what, I can only imagine in the admissions committee thinking, wow, the resilience, the perseverance, of this person. It speaks of your mental strength and of you as, a candidate more than a GPA or, past experience ever would. So keep that in mind when you're in PA school, is that if someone did it before you, you can do it too. If someone else learned it, you can learn it too. You might think, I can't pass this class. Did someone else pass the class? Okay, that means you can pass the class too. So that's kind of what I kept telling myself. It'll make or break it. It's your mind, and by that I mean, you pushing through and getting the right mindset, not necessarily knowledge. You need to get your head in the right headspace. After a semester and a half, I think in the fall, it's like our second semester, but it's the heaviest in didactic year, I started to kind of get in a weird mental spot where I was kind of, comparing and kind of felt inadequate, and, things started spiraling a little bit, I think, because of that mental state. And I recognized it quickly. And I was like, if I don't nip this in the bud right now, I'm in trouble. I need to get out of this headspace, and I need to do it quickly. And I need to do whatever it is that I need to do that. And I started to be very selective about who I was surrounded by, the narrative that I told myself. And I started to really change that and be like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to do this. And let me tell you, things turned around quickly that semester, turned into straight A's that my jaw dropped. I was like, there's no way, because that was not my previous track record, especially in PA school. But you'll notice what a change, what a turnaround you can do by, those things, and really getting your head in the right spot. I think advice while you're in PA school, don't be afraid to try different things that, may not be status quo or what your, friends are doing to help you learn. So examples of that, a lot of my classmates love studying, groups. That works for, I would say, most people. A lot of people like that. I tried it. I tried smaller groups, larger groups, different formats. I'm not a group studier. I just, I like to be a team player on the job, but when it comes to studying, my brain just goes kind of ADD, and, I really need to be in my own, bubble. So, that was different for me. Also, my program had 12-hour lecture days. We had an hour for lunch and, 10 minutes at the end of every hour, but it was 12 hours every day. And so by the end of the day, I would go home and sit there for 5 hours trying to study. Nothing was sticking because my brain had checked out, during that last lecture. So I thought to myself, okay, how can we be more efficient? Because there's only 24 hours in a day, right? And we all get the same amount of time. So I started, let's see, my lectures, I think, started around 7 a.m. So I would wake up at 4 in the morning, make my coffee. Actually, I would program the coffee. I didn't even make it because I knew that I wouldn't get out of bed. So I'd program the coffee, go crawling to the kitchen, grab my cup of coffee, go to my room, and I would study for 2 hours every morning before school because my brain was fresh. I wasn't fatigued from all the lectures. And let me tell you, I could study in 2 hours what would normally take me 4 or 5 at the end of the day. So it became more efficient. And then I could just go through lectures, go home, check out, watch a movie, go to sleep, go to bed early. If I needed to review before an exam or something, of course. But, you got to figure out what works for you. And I never thought that that would be what it would look like. Never knew that that's something that would work, but it worked for me. Maybe it'll work for you. Maybe it's a whole different thing that you come up with. But don't be afraid to just kind of stop and reassess, and see what works for you. But the point is that no matter what that looks like, you can do it. You want to be a PA, you apply, you'll get in eventually. You will be great, and you'll pass the pants. Just gotta work hard and give it your all.
Thank you all for sharing your unique stories and your advice. And thank you to our members and our non-members for all joining in with us today. And that's all for us today. So I hope you all have a great day and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Good luck to everyone. Take care.
Good luck.